Strong companies, lasting partnerships, powerful events. Welcome to the Experience Builders Podcast.
Chris, do you enjoy San Antonio, Texas? Do you enjoy the heat down there? Is it worse than Florida heat?
No, it's not. But it was a great time of year to be in San Antonio, Khalil, because it really wasn't heat. It was cool in the evenings. I think the highs were 70, 71. The EDPA Access Conference we were there for, there was a golf day, which was the most beautiful weather day. So it was delightful.
That's great.
Really.
If you go just a little bit further west from San Antonio, actually a lot further west, near Big Bend National Park, there's a great golf resort called Lajitas, and it's on the border. You can hit your tee shot over the border if you'd like, over the Rio Grande. But no, beautiful time of year to be down
I
there.
think you're overestimating my driving capability, Khalil, to say that.
That's great. No, you were down there for EDP and you got a great award, the Hazel Hayes Award. Congratulations, Chris.
You know, totally surprising. Thank you very much. It was great. The Hazel Hayes Award is EDPA's highest honor in it, named after a woman who in the late 50s and 60s was really a pioneer in the trade show and business event space. Super honored. It's kind of the person of the year, and never saw it coming. So when 300 of your peers stand up and acknowledge you that way, it's very humbling and super great.
Yeah, well, we're proud of you, and it's no surprise to us that you were able to receive that honor. So congratulations again.
Thanks.
As we talk about today's episode, I think that there's several things that probably even happened just recently, but that come up as a business owner that bring this topic to mind of getting out of your way. And I think there was one recently. I'd love to share the story with our listeners if you want to give a little background into how we came up with this topic.
Well, thank you for coming crashing down from the Hazel Hayes high to the reality of what my life is like right now, which I think many of our listeners, experience builders here, are going through the same thing. And that is, as we move out of we're all still companies in recovery. Business is very fast and robust right now. Super grateful for that. But we really, our behavior is catching up from, high value doers that are, that are great soloists and can do everything ourselves to, consistent volume project work right now. And we've just got to do a better job of process and procedures and playing well with others and making sure everybody on the team has visibility. I think we've been sort of inconsistent throughout 2022. And when you and I spoke last week on a project, you felt you felt the full mindset I was in. Is like, God, we're not even using the same terms and the same language, and people have different levels of awareness of the dashboard tools that we have, and some people aren't using any of it. And it was just, I feel every bit of we've got to get everybody on the same page. So that was the motivation, I think, for our topic today, which is, how do you get out of your own way when you're trying to improve and grow your business? So
yeah, it's hard. Alignment is one of the most crucial things for any team. That if you can be aligned, you'll have so much more success. And you're aligned when you have just consistent rhythm and everyone's clicking on the same page and everything's just a little bit smoother. You're anticipating mistakes before they happen. You're taking care of things seamlessly. But it's always hard to do that, especially when you're bringing on new employees. And I think many people in the industry are in that state where things are building back and we're growing our teams again. And yeah, I'm sure many people are struggling with getting people on the same page. What are some of the symptoms of that struggle that you're noticing right now? You had mentioned people just aren't using the same language. What else is going on?
So some of what I'm seeing just in our own organization as we look around is, there are days or weeks it's a struggle to accomplish some things as a team that we used to accomplish very easily together. And so that was, I think as I'm listening to you speak, I'm realizing, when you're a startup and you're growing your business, this is all really great, smart stuff. But it's really, the pain seems to be amplified when just a couple short years ago, we were that company that could smoothly fire on all, 8 cylinders. And now we seem to be misfiring on, 4 or 6 cylinders, right? So I think the first thing is you can tell when people aren't aligned and in sync. And so I'm seeing some of that. I think for us, where we've got multiple locations, when you see different offices doing things differently, whether it's calling in and, on a production meeting, or it's a project launch meeting, or just going in a visit, and you realize, you're not using the same project management, template or tools we are. You're not reading your calendar entries aren't the same critical pieces of information. So I'm noticing that procedurally, some differences. Now, some of that may be driven by what I would call market-specific variables. There's some things in Las Vegas that are much different than our facility in Orlando. So, it's okay in those instances. But I think, what I'm also saying is a lot of this, Khalil, is it's some of our employees being at different stages of recovery. Some have shaken off the rust of pandemic and that slower pace of play. Others have adopted. And then also we've got new people, that some from the industry that know, the business we're in, but they don't know our way of doing it. And if I'm honest, I think there's people in our own company that don't know our own way of doing it. So anyway, you put all that together, and it's, it can be frustrating. I think my opinion, we're not communicating well, or as well as we should be internally. I think, and you'll recognize this, I think a lot of listeners will. It's really easy to be distracted by busyness, by being busy. And, I always get a caution, measuring by activity, not by results. And so it's not enough to be busy. We got to figure out how to work smart and make sure we're being productive. I invented a new word. So we're allowing well-intentioned, I'm going to call it duty creep. Sounds like a dog training term, right? But that mission, that commitment to your job and the duties responsible to that. And we're all hybrid players these days, right? So we're reaching into the gray zone left and right. But I think we're allowing that duty creep to knock us off balance, which can make our day-to-day jobs harder. And I'll give you an example. Great senior project manager in one of my offices who covered a lot of the ground in production when we were first half of 2021 and into 2022, was actively involved in handpicking labor teams for clients for the field operation stuff. But I've hired 9 people to come back, new people, and take on a lot of those responsibilities. And, I'm seeing a person who hasn't completely let go or continues to, in a well-intentioned way, insert themselves, which basically confuses the people the new boss is giving direction to, as well as that old boss, the person that was just the do-it-all person. So there's one example, and I think everybody can relate to that. The well-intentioned, but we're stepping on each other, right? So we got to move from that, what I call it, survival mode, to just now the volume demands, and we have the staff to be much more of an efficient operation organization. And that's where we're trying to be right now.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense. And I think people are very familiar with the stepping on of toes and the disorganized efforts and the lack of communication from, all parties, and understanding of the communication, the lack of efficiencies in the business. As you're growing, growth is really hard, and people love to try to grow their business. But anytime you deal with growth, those problems just get exponentially bigger and harder to manage. So I want to really talk. We understand that there's these inefficiencies, there's, lack of communication and lack of organization, and really hard times within the companies right now as they build back. We want to talk about three things that, as we start the new year, 2023, what are some things that we can focus on to get rid of that stuff, to get out of our own way, and to get back to where things are seamless within our companies and we're, firing on all cylinders, as you said earlier. So the three things that we want to talk about operational improvements, hybrid players, and cultural communication. So let's start with that operational improvements. What are some operational improvements that you see just right in front of you in your company right now?
So it's funny, this came up on a panel discussion at EDPA Access in San Antonio, and I think it was a friend, Adam Beckett, who's the CEO of AGM, who was the one that talked about, because we were having this same conversation, same issues. How do you claw back whatever time you can in your process, in your internal processes, so you can better serve and respond to your customers' needs? The lead time genie is out of the bottle. We're not getting that back in. So customers want things faster and faster. Didn't think it was possible to want it even faster after the pandemic, but they do. And so one of the things I see is, I'll walk through the office. I'll see somebody sending an email to a coworker, maybe in another office, maybe just in another department. And what are you working on? Oh, I'm just, reaching out to Gary to see if he can get me some information on this. And, I just walked down the hall and saw Gary was in a Zoom call with one of our client partners on a completely different project. And he's going to be in there for another 90 minutes. And then, then Gary will respond back when he gets out a couple hours later, and the sender of the email, anyway, it could take a day or two to just pick up the phone, the intercom, or walk in. I think particularly with communication, it's pick up the phone. And we got a lot of people that just think that, if I just type it out and send it, but you don't realize you can get all the information you need and that person's perspective in just a couple of minutes if you have a live conversation. So that's one I'm seeing. I think just getting rid of the waste. I'm not a fan of death by meeting, but clearly we have to start meeting and talking on a more regular basis to make sure everybody's visible on the important dashboard indicators and projects or any updates. So anything that's waste is an old way of doing things. It just doesn't apply to us anymore. And maybe it did when we were, a third of the staff and a third of the revenue that we are now. But now we've got to get back to the things, we remember doing before, and we need to. Removing bottlenecks is another one. If I can automate something, if I can create a spreadsheet the community, my tribe has access to, and they're not lining up at the production manager's door or at my door or at, so it's let's get the information out real time. Let's make it easy for people. So, I know we're sort of swinging into communication, but those are the three things: the waste and the bottlenecks. And really, I want to be stingier with the time we spend on things. How do we figure out how to be more efficient? Yeah. So that's the biggest operational things I'm seeing that we need to get out of the way ourselves about.
Yeah. You're talking about communication. It reminds me of Elon Musk's 6 rules for productivity at his companies. One of them is to forget the chain of command, to communicate with colleagues directly, not through supervisor managers, but just be fast communicators, because fast communicators make fast decisions, and faster decisions is a competitive advantage. Such an interesting thing. And I think it's so true that if you try to follow this chain of command and make your company more bureaucratic, we've all seen what bureaucracy does. It just slows everything down, and you want to be a little bit quicker inside of your company than that. So another thing that you mentioned there, you talked about just operational efficiency and automating things and using spreadsheets. I think just using more systems inside your company, whether that's incorporating a software into your company that's going to allow you to manage projects more seamlessly and all in one place that everybody can see. A huge thing for operational efficiency is having one source of truth. And that spreadsheet might be that one source of truth where, hey, if I need to know where anything is for this project, I can look here. And that one source of truth is huge, and it's going to allow you to make better decisions, have clear understanding of where things are. And that's something I always recommend when we talk about operational efficiency. We talked about hybrid. We've talked about hybrid
great.
players before on the team. I think in the episode with Michael McMahon, we talked about it a little bit. But where are you seeing hybrid players really impact your team?
So this is great because it's. I believe that people deserve written job descriptions and to know what their position requires. But I cannot argue with the fact that we've made it through this year. Right. By the way, when we say a hybrid player, it's somebody who is really great. They can wear multiple hats. They're used to reaching in the gray zone on the positions to the left and to the right of them. So a project manager, for example, may also have great skills in production planning, and they might also have great skills about engineering and buildability, which is our AutoCAD and things like that. So, previously we had dedicated people for that, and we've brought more people back that are, that's their primary functionality. But we were very profitable in 2022. I'm convinced, because we could do more with fewer people, because those fewer people had that hybrid gene and could reach further than what their job description stated the job to be. So that's what we're talking about when we say hybrid. Somebody, if those are the MVPs that are making companies work right now. I also think somebody that's got hybrid skill sets is a better experience for the customer to interact with, whether you're an estimator and you're somebody that's traveled to execute and install and move in and move out an event in the field. It just makes you clients know when they're talking to people that really have the experience and know what they're doing. So it's been a wonderful blessing in this year. And what I'm realizing, and I think this will resonate with a lot of owners as we think about, when is it, how many people should I hire back? Should I bring that back full time, or should I wait on that? Should I outsource it? Should I keep having those duties rolled up into 2 or 3 other people? I think the economy right now in 2023 still shows a lot of mixed signals, right? And this was, again, another discussion at the Access event this past week. I just need it to feel a little more sure-footed.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what that means. I just know that if unemployment is at 8.6% and interest rates are still climbing, and there's still significant labor shortage and a lot of other disruptions, I can't quite predict what spend patterns are going to be yet. So the last thing we want to do is hire a bunch of people that the business won't support, and we've disrupted somebody's lives if there's going to have to be layoffs again, and none of us want that. And yet I don't want to burn out the people that we have. So that's the balance. And I think we can, right now and probably into next year, we can do more with fewer people that are capable of wearing more hats. So that's probably going to be the hiring rule that we default to, Khalil, in the next 12 months. And then what I would suggest for all of us that are, and you talked about systems, and I think we build systems around diverse roles so that we're going to be able to cross-train more easily.
Yeah.
And, I used to think of the word system, and I think about technology. We've talked about this before in other episodes. A system is merely an agreed upon method of how your group, your team does, how they do business with each other under the same roof. So if we can all agree on who's doing what and how we pass the baton, and, that I need that design out of the design department in 48 hours, so give me 2 days. Don't tell me it's going to take 12 days, because we're going to lose clients and we're going to lose projects if we do that. So I think everything we're talking about regarding hybrid and the systems we have to adapt to, it's super valuable as we move forward, as we look for the market to give us, better signs of sure-footedness, so we can, start to add more people maybe and separate some of those duties.
Yeah. Well, and I think as smaller companies, we're not thousands of employees. As you start to get that kind of headcount, you can afford to have dedicated persons for each role. But as you're, less than that, you're probably going to have, multiple roles for just one hire. And I think hybrid player is one way of saying it, really a team player, in my opinion. Someone who's going to take one for the team when it comes down to
Well,
it.
that's what we
They're
used
going
to call it, right? A team player just goes the extra
exactly.
mile. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's what you want. Now, what I do want to say for business owners out there to be careful about is don't build your company around one hybrid player, because that's where you run into the disaster, where you do have the real MVP who can do
Absolutely.
everything, and you trust them with everything and anything, and you don't really build systems around it because you just trust them innately. As soon as that person has a different job offer, they go somewhere else or they retire or whatever it is, you're in trouble. You've essentially abdicated everything inside your company to that one person. And really what you want to be doing is hiring people that have that team player mentality across the board in your company that are hybrid players. You're training them to be hybrid players in all of your systems so that even if one person does leave, now somebody else in the company knows exactly how to take over that role. But yeah, be careful about just having that one hybrid player.
So true. And, so if pandemic taught us anything, Khalil, um, I think people came back to work, those that came back to work, uh, with an appreciation for a more balanced life. So, really, the event business can be a very tough business, particularly in the high seasons. We all know what the January through May run looks like. We all know what the fall busy season feels like. Um, so, I mean, 70 hours a week, in some cases more, that's just not the norm anymore. So, and by the way, I think we talked a little bit about this with Michael McMahon on the workforce development. I think culture is going to be one of the greatest advantages we can offer to attract new hires or people to come see us, even if they make less money with you. People want that balance, and so if you come in as the ace hitter to a smaller mid-sized company, and they're just gonna strap their wagons to you and ride you hard, you're gonna burn that person out. You can't rely on one person. You're right. You've got to create a culture of use that person for knowledge sharing, but we're really trying hard to create as much flexibility as our industry will allow. And we're not one of those industries. Let's face it, a lot of the business events move in and move out at nights and on weekends. So that's just the way it is, and that's not going to change. But as an owner, I can tell you, we'll staff differently to make sure that we're not burning people out, and certainly we're not going to put the burden all on one or two people to carry the whole load. So yeah.
Well, it's an interesting thing you talk about with culture as an advantage, and people would take less pay even to work at a really good culture. Think about it. Some of the best hours of your life, the best hours of your day are spent at work. And so why would you want to be around people that you don't enjoy being around? So if you can create a culture where people enjoy being around, like that's huge for them.
We spend more time with our coworkers at work than we do with our families. I mean, that sounds really sad to say. So if that's the case, if you're a full-time employee, it really helps if you like and enjoy the people that you're working with. And I take that very seriously. So I care about that dynamic. I know doesn't have to be a requirement to like everybody you work with. I think you do need to show respect for everybody that you work with. And I think as business leaders, we need to create a place where people enjoy coming to. It's not a what's that, the donut commercial, time to make the donuts. The guy that gets up at 4 a.m. I don't want people walking through the door at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning with that attitude.
Right.
So that's on leadership to make sure we've got a good culture, which, by the way, it leads me to the third point you were talking about. And that is, we talk about communication. It's really, you got to have a culture of communicating. Right. And in my opinion, I think that needs to be communicating deeply and often, just constantly. I don't mean over explaining, but I know that the people that work in the back of the house here are so grateful when we have our monthly all staff meetings, and they are hearing what we're doing in marketing, and they hear about the EDPA conference that we went to, and that we've got, 4 new client partners that showed up out of that. And we got to see our vendors, and or there's several people that have booked appointments to come see us in one of our facilities. So there's going to be visitors, right? And they know that's usually a happy day. There's treats and fun stuff that happens when we know we have VIPs coming through. So I think that constant communication, I think we need to lesson very personal right now is creating common language with the staff that we have. So, we might say I&D. If you've joined us from an ad agency, I'm not sure you know that means installation and dismantle. I don't think you may not even know everything that encompasses. We used to talk about this with artwork when we're collecting art for large format graphics, and we say, well, your art file has to be a certain size and it has to be a certain DPI, dots per inch, and if it's you blow that up 800% to a grand format output size, it's going to be blurry. Oh, we can just res it up. What does any of that mean? Right. So let's make sure that, check yourself. Are we creating a language that everybody understands? Because it becomes a shorthand when you use a term or an expression, and that claws back time and helps save time.
I think sometimes, Chris, people talk with those terms even as a way of sounding smarter and trying to be like witty or clever or intelligent. And it's just a waste of time. Like, you're not impressing anybody. You don't need to.
I've been that guy in my career years ago when I was young and dumb.
Yeah, you don't need to do that.
No, it's true. I can, I used to think particularly, graphics can be such an appreciation for the vendors that manage artwork and get things sized properly, right to a fractional, size. And, my knowledge was puddle deep. So I could say, the talking point, and I could ad lib one sentence. But if I was talking with a client's creative director and they got deeper into things, I was in the weeds. So, and you're right. A lot of times that's a defense mechanism. You throw out those techie terms or things to try and sound credible. But in the end, what I learned was put the work in and learn what those terms really mean. And the real value as a servant to your customers is break down the language into words and vocabulary that they can understand. I find analogies help when I do that. And as a leader, it's really helped when we're onboarding, training new people, and I can see them nod and not understand the concept of what I'm saying. Okay, well, it's kind of like this, right? And then you're able to share a story in some regard. But right now, the talking and the talking as a team, I don't know about if you've experienced it, but I've seen resistance from really good people in my company at getting back to regular meeting schedules. We used to have production meetings. They could be 15 or 20 minutes twice a week. And the problem is when they get into meeting creep and you're talking about other things. But if we all should say, no, we're only going to go through what are the projects we're working on today and what's on the radar for the rest of the week. We're just doing a quick update. If there's a problem with something or challenges, then let's have a separate meeting about that. We don't need everybody there. Let's just have the 2 or 3 people that need to be included in that. But I think that's where I'm, so new opportunities meeting, we like to, we like to know what those are and make sure the right leaders, if engineering needs input and field operations needs an input, we try to get, here are the 21 requests that we got this week, and let's go through what they are. And let's decide what we're saying. No, thank you. Let's assign who's going to be in first chair to those. And I will tell you, it saves you time if you do that. I know when you're getting back to those types of meetings, you think it's just a time suck.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of death by meeting, but I am a fan of clear, crisp, regular communication. And that's what we're really talking about.
Yeah.
By the way, what does it sound like if you've seen people are a little defensive? I'm too busy to, well, you know what? Then you might be the problem. So let's knock that off.
Yeah.
So
I think with meetings, I think those 15, 20-minute meetings are crucial. I think they're so valuable. I call them a stand-up meeting. We do them with our team. And just that, we do them twice a week.
That's a great, by the way, I like that. So you're going to get tired if we're going to be in there for an hour. So yeah, a stand-up meeting.
You stand up and we're just all talking. And, you're so right. Sometimes people will kind of hijack the meeting and talk about something that's not necessary, a problem they're having or whatever it is. And
Yes.
something that I recognize is that people were hijacking the meeting because they wanted to be heard, and they wanted to make sure that like they were recognized, that their problems were recognized, that everyone understood what their challenges were, and just creating some additional channels and opportunities for people to be heard outside of those meetings can play a huge impact, right? If you're having a stand-up meeting and it's really clear, hey, this is the only thing we talk about, right? And we go through it every time.
Yeah.
Have those one-on-one conversations outside of the meeting. Schedule a one-on-one proactively. Hey, every other week we have a one-on-one where you can share that with me. Or I just stop by your desk and say, hey, how is this going? How are you doing? Having those opportunities will prevent those hijackings in the future and make that communication much more clear inside of meetings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's great. One-on-ones are a great way to address
Yeah.
stuff when it starts to go off the rail. And again, let's touch base and make sure we understand you understand your duties, your goals, your objectives, and we'll get together as a group. Let's respect each other's time.
Yeah.
Right.
Chris, I know we've got a lot of owners out there, or even high-level managers that are at companies. And I think if you're in that position, these three things are so important, and they need to be your priority if they're not. If you're stuck in business development and you're not able to focus on the operational efficiencies, if you're not able to focus on getting your players set up properly within your team and hiring the right people, and if you're not able to focus on your culture, then you're really missing out. And you've got to find a way to get out of BD or whatever it is so that you can work on those things. Your primary objective should be to remove the bottlenecks, find what the bottlenecks are, and then help your people remove those bottlenecks from their workflow. And then you should be communicating the vision for your company, what our mission is, what we're here to do, why we're doing it, and what the goals are that we have and objectives for each person, and help them to hit those goals. I think a lot of times we run into these issues and we get into our own way when we are focused on the wrong things. And these are absolutely the things you should be focusing on as the high level manager, owner of your company.
Well, couldn't agree more. And I will, here's the good news. If you're struggling with some of the things you and I are talking about, it's because you're growing, right? You're back in a good place. And we're just, in some cases, it's reacquainting ourselves with what we know we're supposed to do. In some cases, maybe you've started something new. You've left a bigger company. Maybe you're on your own, and now you're in it with hiring staff. And these are some of the things you're needing to be reminded of. Couple of observations, Khalil, that I think are worth sharing for any of us that are in the position we're in, and that is we find ourselves tripping over ourselves. As a leader, I can tell you, people don't learn at the same pace or in the same ways. When I remind myself of that, it reminds me to be patient with, because I get frustrated, right? I'm like, God, we were doing this a couple of years ago a lot smoother. Why are we struggling? Well, we've got some new people, and we've got some people that are fatigued, and they learn at a different pace. I think patience and persistence is the key for us. I've learned some people get concepts quicker than others, and there's nothing wrong with that. But be grateful when they do. Ask their help and bring along the others. I've learned that some people learn by doing. Others are visual learners. I think change is hard to accept for a lot of people. I thrive on it, but most entrepreneurs do. I think if you're an intrapreneur working within a company you own, it can feel disruptive. I've learned that group progress, I've really learned this quarter. Group progress can feel slow when individuals are learning and changing at different speeds. The higher up you are as a leader or an owner, the more you tend to look at your group and you're judging them as one. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces there. So you can have the best vision, you can have the best strategy, you can have great teams, but if you don't have crisp, clear, consistent communication, that alignment that we're all seeking starts to break down, and ultimately the team will fail. So patience, persistence, as you said, one-on-ones when it's inappropriate. Otherwise, it's strategic short meetings to keep everybody moving forward and aligned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And that falls in line with, again, Elon Musk's 6 rules for productivity. Go check that out if you haven't seen those. So we've talked about several things here, Chris. The main 3 being, let's work on operational efficiency, let's have hybrid players, and let's consistently communicate with our team. Obviously people can work on those directly. What advice do you have in general for the owners, the high-level managers out there as they approach 2023, maybe thinking about those 3 areas? What advice do you have for them?
There's a great article I just read recently by Roy Schwartz. He's the CEO of Axios, and they were exploring ways that leaders are trying to adapt their leadership styles to better serve this hybrid workforce we'll have or are seeking. And he said, we're all trying to find the right ways to communicate. They've started using, he discussed a strategy that he calls up, down, around, and out. And I'd love it if we grab that, Khalil, and put that in the show notes for people, because basically up and down is weekly department leads do an update about what projects and challenges they're facing there, and they send it down to their teams. Around is from those updates, the high level business owner or GM, you select the updates that the entire organization needs to see to stay aligned. By the way, that becomes part of our monthly all staff meeting. And so that's up, down, and around. And then out is when, we're going to use that same method to decide what needs to be communicated to our outside organization, to our clients or vendors. So I like that, and we've sort of begun to adopt that. But if any of this is ringing true, and you just feel like you just can't get out of the way of yourselves as a team, do an autopsy on your current processes. That's where we started. You want to identify what are our choke points and the things that are sucking time away from us, and what are the confusing bottlenecks? Number 2, I can't say enough about the common language. Let's get everybody using the same terms and the same tools enterprise-wide. It's not enough in one office, but make sure your remote workers and your satellite locations also are part of that. It's just going to make it so much easier for people to communicate and be able to back each other up, regardless of where their locations are. And again, I like I said, making time to meet regularly, be respectful of how busy everybody is. We want you busy in a productive way. So it's not going to be a death by meeting. Short, regular, topic-specific meetings ultimately are going to save time. So, and man, get off emails, pick up the phone and get the information from your coworker or a supplier or a vendor. It sounds like it's going to take more time. It's going to ultimately save you a ton of time in your process. And then for guys like me, I'm charting progress. We measure results. We celebrate the victories, man. That's a big one. But and then we just fine tune and adjust moving forward. But I think that's how we're going to enter 2023, with gratitude for the business, but really a mission to line up better and move from being, the spring training team into the championship caliber team. So
love it.
That's my view from the cheap seats.
All great things from Hazel Hayes, a winner. Appreciate the advice, Chris. Great episode. I think that this will be super valuable. If anybody has questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us in the show notes. And I'm sure there's several topics within this topic that we can cover and dive deeper into. So I appreciate all your wisdom and experience as well. And Chris, we'll see you on the next one.
Absolutely look forward to it, Khalil. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Experienced Builders Podcast. Check out our website in the show notes or visit crewxp.com to learn more.